This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. It's time for the baseball podcast with, I'm going to get your title right, Bally's national MLB writer, David Brown.
That is close enough. Thank you, Andy.
No, it's not. So it's not. All right. Next time. I'll get it completely right next time. Whatever that is. And as always, this is the Pointless Exercise Podcast. So you can subscribe to the podcast. You found it, so you already know how to do that. You can subscribe to the newsletter at pointlessexercise.com. There's a new T-shirt. It's not. You can still buy Prospect Pervert if you want. But now there's one that says, if Seiya doesn't swing at it, it's not a strike. Huh?
Well, is that going out of style already?
Well, because he struck out 3 times during the game that's on right now.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's the T-shirt. It took a bad turn. Maybe I should take it down. Actually, I think what's happened is once 1,000 people have bought the T-shirt, it'll remove the curse. Say he'll go back to not striking out again. How about that?
I like where you're going with that. Absolutely, good positive thinking there and marketing.
So I'd like to be as timely as possible with this. The last time we did this podcast, literally while we were doing it, old friend of the Cubs, Joe Maddon, intentionally walked Corey Seager with the bases loaded in the 4th inning.
Right.
Of the game. He did it because he had brought a left-hander in, and the 2 guys coming up after Seager were left-handed hitters. And he just said, his explanation after the game left a lot to be desired. Basically said, what do you think? Should we do this? And whoever his pitcher, I don't know who the pitcher, doesn't matter who the pitcher was. He was like, sure. So he was on board.
Yeah.
I was certainly not shocked that Joe did something like that. I was amused by baseball Twitter's reaction, which it shouldn't be. They basically wanted Joe fired during the game.
As if it was revelatory.
Despite the fact, the Angels won that night. They won the next 2 games in that series. They're currently in first place in the American League West. So maybe hold off on the firing squad.
Sparked by Joe's.
All because of that. It's they literally have been on fire ever since he handed the Rangers a run.
You talk about the reaction from Twitter though. You remember that? Did you notice the Mike Trout reaction? He was like,
"What? Huh?
Counting." Wait.
It's like looking at was there somebody on all of the bases?
What have we gotten ourselves into here?
So last night, Shohei took a perfect game into the 6th. And Joe said Shohei was staying in until he either got the perfect game or somebody reached. He wasn't going to do this mamby-pamby Clayton Kershaw stuff, despite the fact that they probably should treat Shohei and his arm with just as much caution as the Dodgers are treating Clayton and his. I don't think it's a surgically repaired elbow, right? He just had elbow problems last year, and they were like, we got to kind of nurse him into there was short spring training. Kershaw actually signed late, so it made it that as much as it made sense. But Joe's like, screw it. Shohei's he's gonna do it. I enjoyed in that game the the theory in the top of the sixth. Shohei bunted for a hit, and then the Astros Dusty came out and changed pitchers, and there was some immediate speculation that then caught fire afterwards that Shohei having to stand and wait at first base for a pitcher to warm up probably tired him out. It's like, oh, for fuck's sakes, how fragile are these pitchers? Do we think? Are you all right? Should we instead? How about this? Instead of bringing the jacket out for Shohei, let's bring out a stool. Shohei, do you want to sit for a little bit? Sure. All right, good. It's comfortable. Maybe just during the first batter he faces. Don't hit. This guy's not gonna get hit. Just stay on the stool. Rest up. You got more important things to do.
Have a teammate come by who's not in the game and get into a position where Shohei can sit on him.
Yeah, just. Be a good use of Ryan Tepera.
Yeah. Yes.
Ryan, assume the position. Shohei's going to sit on you for a while. What? Wait a minute. What? I got an MVP vote a couple years ago. Yeah, it was an accident. Get on all fours. Fine. Another managerial news today. I'm sure you saw that Miguel Cabrera was coming up with a chance to get his 3,000th hit, and Aaron Boone intentionally walked him. I like that Miggy then had to calm the crowd down. The crowd was booing, and he's like, the Tigers, it didn't even work. The Tigers ended up scoring 2 more runs, and they won 3-0. But I immediately then wondered, because it was the last game of the series, and I thought, obviously Aaron Boone is under no. It's not like he's like, oh no, we got to give the good people of Detroit a chance to see the 3,000th hit. And I thought that would really suck for the fans if now they're going to go on like a 10-game road trip.
Yeah.
The Rockies are coming to Detroit tomorrow.
Okay.
So Miggy will get
I don't even think I realized that part.
I looked it up, and it was the Rockies making a rare road appearance this season.
Wow. That is an awkward pairing, the Rockies and the Tigers.
Yeah.
The people, they gotta drive all the way back out to Dearborn and then drive all the way back into Detroit if they want to see it.
That's right.
It's like we came all the way down here.
The Rockies, 10 of their first 12 games have been at home. They go on like a 6-game road trip, and then they come back for another long homestand. So people are like, oh, look, the Rockies might be pretty good. No, they're not good. I mean, they were terrible last year, and they won 48 games at Coors Field. This is what they do. They'll win like 12 games on the road this year. It'll be fine. The record will even out. It was like I was trying to calm Cub fans down who were getting all gooey about the offense. And at the time they were doing it, I said, guys, they literally have played 44% of their games at Coors Field this season. They hit 17 doubles in 4 games at Coors Field. All of them on the ground. Every single one of them on the ground.
Negative 12 launch angles.
A few years ago, I don't even know what year was it? 19? The Cubs' one big free agent signing was Daniel Descalso. The reason for the signing was, Theo was telling us, hey, don't worry, this is brilliant. In his last year in Arizona, he increased his launch angle. And now all those like fly balls to the warning track are home runs now. His guy's amazing. He's going to be incredible. This is great. And he was terrible. Terrible to the point where they just ate the second year of his contract and said, just go play with yourself. We don't want to watch this anymore. So the Cubs launch angle was a thing. It does not appear to be a thing with the current iteration of the Cubs, who hit 60% of their balls on the ground. 60. They've got some players, like Nick Madrigal, about 75% of his balls are trying to be rolled through the infield. It does not seem like a sustainable strategy for success.
Whatever happened to the line drive up the middle? I guess there's someone shifted there, so you can't do that anymore.
Madrigal's an interesting player. He does one thing well, and it turns out it's grounding into double plays. He's leading the league. The Cubs as a team are leading the league, and he individually is leading the league. But no, we heard all this stuff about how you're going to love this guy. He makes contact all the time, doesn't strike out, but he also doesn't walk.
No,
He's not very fast. He's very tiny. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's very small. He's not an exceptionally good defensive second baseman.
No.
He has a very weak arm. There were twice in the Rockies series where they had a shift on where he was playing just to the shortstop side of second base. Both times the ball was hit to him. Neither time could he actually make the throw to first.
That's too far.
And at the time, and still, I just wondered, why are you shifting a player to a position where he can't make the throw? It doesn't seem to be, it is not doing him any favors. It's also not doing the team any favors. I say that other than that. Oh, and he doesn't hit for any power ever. Other than that, he's really good. So very excited about the next 4 years of Nick Madrigal playing second base.
Do they need to find someone to compensate for the arm to do a you know what it's called, a relay? I was going to say a rally. That's not it.
They have to put a cutoff man between the second baseman and first base. Yes.
Yes.
They might want to try it. But this is a team who tonight they put a shift on.
Speaking of shifts,
where they didn't put anybody near the third base bag. What's his name? Why can't I think of Reynolds' first name for the Pirates?
Ryan.
I wanted to call him Kevin. That would be Kevin Mick Reynolds. That wouldn't be Kevin Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds. Hit a slow roller just past the bag. Poor little P-Wiz. Patrick Wisdom was chasing it. And it was going to be an easy double. Nobody bothered to cover third base.
I think it's the pitcher's.
It had to be that, and I was amazed because Jim Deshaies is like, well, I don't know, maybe Wilson could have gone and covered. Well, let's go. Let's leave home plate unattended.
Right.
Yeah, I would think that the pitcher could have wandered over there. He didn't have to actually be on third. He just had to be in the vicinity so that when Reynolds looked up, he's like, oh, there's somebody there. Instead, he looked up and there was nothing, and he just took off. So a very well designed defense.
49.4 mile an hour triple.
The last time a guy got a triple on a ball hit that slow, a bird had actually picked it up and flew away with it. I don't know who that was, but I'm sure it happened.
Larry Bittner.
It could have been. It could have been Larry Bittner. So you've been out to the ballpark in Kansas City a couple of times this week.
I have to see the Tigers.
How are the fountains? Are they still spraying all over the cameras? Did you take care of that?
I did, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I with a pipe wrench and fix that.
Yes, I have one too that I've never figured out how to use. But no, as I think I mentioned, my father-in-law helped install those fountains, and he's no longer with us, so I can't ask him for advice on, hey, how can we get the sea spray to stop? Yeah. But the 40 mile an hour winds have ceased in the Kansas City area, so that was really the big culprit, and I think the fountains have been staying within themselves quite literally ever since. So, that hasn't been an issue.
That's good. I'm gonna miss the poor center field camera operator having to just wipe it down with a towel between pitches. Made for an excellent broadcast.
Yeah. So they ironed out that problem. I got to see Javier Baez just kind of hang around for a few days with a overgrown thumb, and they finally put him on the injured list. I didn't really get a chance to see how he was doing, but he started out well and then got hurt celebrating, beating the White Sox on opening day. I don't know. Did you go over this last week? It's like he's the most unlucky celebratory man in the world. Last year he wins that, helps win the game for the Mets, and he loses his earring.
Yeah.
And now this. So I didn't really get a chance to follow up on either of those topics. But
do you think that's how he hurt his thumb? He was overcompensating. He was like protecting his earrings with his hands, and they were hitting him in the head, and he got
that's
hit
a
on
good
the
question.
thumb.
Yeah,
that could be why. Were you overcompensating for your earring loss, and you ended up taking
it's my jewelry.
a celebratory head slap?
I'm
right
keeping
to the
my
thumb.
jewelry, my $400,000 studs. Yeah, so I mean, we're joking, but yeah, that's basically what happened. He was like bracing himself, and like ripped his thumb off, and it was just so. It's going to be a while till Javy gets back on the field.
That's too bad. In typical Javy fashion, though, he played. This is what he would do with the Cubs. He'd get hurt. Javy is a guy we learned as Cub fans. He'll get hurt like 4 times a week, where you think he's dead. Like he'll just be laying on the grass, and you're like, "Oh no, this is terrible." And then he's like Gumby. He hops right up, and he's fine.
Yeah.
There was a great example of that in the it was in the World Series run in 2016, where all of a sudden it was in one of the Dodgers games towards the end of the game, and Javy's limping horribly, can't put any weight on his foot, and you're like, holy shit, this is typical Cub luck. He was the LCS co-MVP with John Lester.
Yeah.
He's having a great series, and he's hurt. And the whole season is flashing before your eyes. And when they came back out to take the field for the bottom of the inning, he's just playing shortstop. He's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Or second base. He's like, no, I'm good. They just brought crutches out for you. No, I'm good. Okay. So we never thought he would get hurt. And then there was the year where it was when they didn't make the playoffs in the Daniel Descalso year of 19. And they kept talking about how Javy was playing with a bruised heel. And he was playing and limping around and playing okay. And then they're like, oh, he played with it for like 2 weeks. Like, oh, we x-rayed it. It's broken.
By the way.
Like, wait a minute. It took you 2 weeks? Did you have to order an x-ray machine? I thought you had one in the fancy new clubhouse. So I think there's just this feeling like he's just like, I'm fine. I'll just play with it.
Yeah.
And then after a few days in Detroit, they were like, Javy, that thumb is enormous. Is it supposed to be that big? Maybe we'll take a look at that. You got Bob's Big Boy's thumb. That's probably not good. If you're wondering, there are still Bob's Big Boys in Michigan.
Are there?
Yes, I know, because I would drive by one when I lived in Traverse City for a few years. I'd be driving up from this area and go right by the Big Boy. I ate there once.
And that was enough.
Yeah, it's much better to just drive by and look at the ridiculous. I guess it's a statue. It's a piece of an art installation. I don't know what you would call it. The Big Boy.
It's a rocket ship in Austin Powers.
Yeah, that's right. It was. The food tasted like it may have had some sort of rocket fuel sprinkled over it. So there's that. So offense in general is down in the major leagues. And there are lots of theories. I wonder, do you have a theory as to why home runs are down and just scoring in general?
Well, 2, I guess, theories. Well, one isn't so much a theory, but we've talked about how there are humidors in every ballpark now, and that must be affecting the balls in a certain way that is dampening, if you will, the home run parade. And the other thing is the ball itself. We know they keep changing the composition of the ball. And, I've asked some like guys on the Royals if they notice anything. The Royals don't notice anything because they're oblivious to home runs anyway. And like, no, we don't know, because there've been like 40-mile-an-hour winds in Kansas City making the fountains shake. And, they just think that it's the environment or the weather or whatever keeping, they don't know. But the composition of the ball, last year they used 2 different balls. This year there's like a third different ball. there's that. There's the humidors. So, it's I think it's some combination of that plus the weather and all those other things that happen in April. And so it's kind of an amalgam. Not really sexy theory, but that's what I got.
Yeah, I didn't know until now that the new ball, the one they're using this year, is made out of wet paper. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like it would be tough to hit that. I honestly, I think that the lack of home runs is simply because the Cubs are hitting the ball on the ground. I think it has drugged the entire sport down.
The magical line, if you will.
So during the Cub game that is on in the background as we're doing this, Boog and JD talked about the new rosin bags.
Okay.
You get your choice of two different one. Pitchers can pick which one they want. This isn't like during the pandemic. Remember when the guys had to bring their own rosin bags to the mound?
Right.
Bring your own bag. It's BYOB. Bring your own bag. There's two different kinds. One is called the Rock, which doesn't sound pleasant. And then the other one is I forget what it was. Old Puffy. I don't know what they called the second one, but there's two different kinds of rosin. One is apparently a little more like the traditional, sticky talcum powder stuff. The other one is apparently just really sticky. And in spring training, Rick Sutcliffe had one, and they put him on camera. He took the rosin bag and he put it on his forearm, and he just held his forearm up, and it wouldn't fall off his forearm.
Oh.
It was on the bottom. It was under the underside of his forearm, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know about this. I hope he got it off. Nobody's not still walking around with the thing stuck to his arm. Rick, what is that? That's a rosin bag. I don't know how to get rid of it. Do you have any ideas? Does George Clooney have any ideas? What's he doing? No. Sorry, Rick.
He's going to go and take care of that thing.
He's going to take care of this thing.
Clooney?
It's getting itchy.
It's like the gag from Naked Gun or Police Squad, maybe, where the giant man is eating a banana, and he's like, you got something on the side of your mouth. Oh, no, the other side, and this big piece of a banana falls. And oh, Rick, you had this rosin bag. Oh, right, I forgot.
So now, wasn't originally they blamed the I can't keep track of what year this was, but they changed ball manufacturers, right? Or the plant. I think it's still who makes our balls? Rawlings? Yeah, Rawlings makes our balls still. And they were blaming it that the machines, instead of the poor sweatshop ladies in Costa Rica, they actually had machines, and the machine was winding the ball too tight.
Yeah,
it was making it like a super ball, and they were going to have to figure that out. So then they, I don't know. I think, is there a dial on the machine? Maybe turn it to the left, see what happens. Is that better? I don't know. So they were gonna mess with it that way. And so then there was, the ball's too hard, and then we'll get a softer ball. It's like, at some point, did you just stop messing with it? It's a ball. There's your ball. We're just gonna play with it, and
right.
Fans like home runs. That's fine. I don't mind if the ball gets hit occasionally into the stands. That seems all right by me. But now there's the they used one in, I guess, the Arizona Fall League that is dimpled.
Yeah,
they actually got more like a basketball kind of a feeling. So you could get, the ball wouldn't be completely smooth. That way they wouldn't need the umps wouldn't need to be using the Mississippi mud or whatever the hell this stuff is that they rub all over the balls, because there would be a little bit of tack to the ball itself,
like the one that they use in Japan.
Yeah, that's right.
Supposedly the Japanese, the NPB ball is dimpled, and they don't use any even rosin, I don't think.
Yeah. They don't need no special sauce.
No,
rubbed all over the ball. It is odd that for like 100 years, the solution was just rub some shit all over it. Just give the ump. We'll give the ump a jar full of shit, and they'll just rub it all over the balls, and then the players will just play with the ball that has shit rubbed all over it. Okay, you're right. That's the best. I can't come up with a better idea than that. This is great. And will it be consistent? Will the umps rub the same amount of shit on every ball? No. Every ball will be different. Every ump will be different. There will be everything will be completely different from every. You never know what you're going to get when the ump throws you a new ball. It might not even be white. Who knows? That'll be great. But for 100 years, that was like, there's no other way to do it. This is it. Baseball. We just like write that stuff off as charm. Oh no, we love that because that's the way it is. We love it. It's just like with umpires completely butchering the strike zone. No, it's a human element. It's what makes it great. Element. What makes it great. We love
two ballparks are exactly alike.
That's right. Ballparks are different. The strike zones are different. The balls are different. It's great. And yet we will compare every player on exactly the same things. Every variable in the game will be completely different, but we're all going to compare them like everything was completely hermetically sealed. Because I know I like nothing more than watching Angel Hernandez and Laz Diaz just completely befuddle everyone with, wait, how is that a strike? That was the last pitch was in the same spot. That wasn't a strike. No, that's how it is. It's a human element. It makes the game great. So, most teams have played somewhere around 13 or 14 games at this point. So we're almost 10%, according to my math, into the season, which should be more than that, but we had to lose the first week of games, and they're just going to sprinkle them in. It was funny. There was somebody who posted they had a screenshot of the Giants schedule, and they just had a circle around this one random game in Milwaukee. The guy was like, what is this? And I was like, that's one of the games that they're making. I was like, they're just going to go to Milwaukee for one game? Yes, they are.
It's a lot easier to fly into Milwaukee than it used to be. So,
yeah.
Cincinnati, that's a hard town to get in and out of.
So roughly 10% in, are there any teams that are really surprising you? Either good or
I got to look at the standings because I'm definitely one of these people that it's not good necessarily for a baseball writer. It's not like I'm not paying attention.
Well, it doesn't matter. Other than the fact I just ask you, what happens after 14 games is relatively meaningless.
Right.
Other than something to talk about on a podcast.
Okay. I'm just saying. Let me look here.
I'm just saying that the fact that you haven't assiduously studied the standings is probably not a personal failing on your part.
I'm surprised that the Orioles have 4 wins in 13 games. I thought they might somehow lose 14 in 13. So that's sort of surprising.
That's kind of like how Patrick Wisdom struck out 26 times in his first 21 at-bats.
Yeah, same principle.
But now he has 14 hits in his last 9 at-bats. So he's making up for it.
Everything evens out. Baseball is amazing in that way. Let's see. No. I mean, it's funny that the Reds are 2-11. I guess I thought that was possible. And then the owner's son comes out and says, "What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah. They have not won since he said.
And they've not won. And they've lost every game like 9-2.
Yeah, and I believe they've lost 10 in a row. And in those 10 games, I believe they've scored 2 or fewer runs 5 times.
Right.
That's not good. I don't know if you know that. It's not good.
I do. Yeah. I'm not. The Padres are doing pretty well. Mackenzie Gore has come up, their prospect from the minors, and sort of has recaptured himself. You're asking. So I'm not surprised that the Padres are 9-5, but I got the feeling that nobody thought that they'd be any good, that they just continued to lose like they did at the end of last year. And I think they were sort of my sleeper pick to finish 20 games behind the Dodgers, and I think that could happen. And they'll be with the Giants fighting it out for second place. So in a positive way, not surprised that the Padres are 9-5, but pleasantly surprised that a thing that I guessed before the season through 14 games is kind of happening. So if that answers your question in a way.
Are you surprised that the Padres have yet to make an error?
The Royals have yet to make an error. Them too, huh? The Padres?
And the Cubs, until Jonathan Villar decided to play soccer with the ball last night, had only made one. And Tim Anderson still has more errors than the Cubs.
Man. I think those happened in one inning too, didn't they? Maybe they didn't, but it seemed like
he had 3 in 1 inning, and then he made another later in the game. And that's when he flipped off the fans.
Right.
Yeah.
There's way too much of that flipping going on.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving, and I don't know what they can find him, but I'm not saying like it's a huge deal that Tim. I mean, kids see worse all the time, but let's rein it in a little bit. We don't need to be swearing with our fingers so much. But yeah, the Royals, they made an error and then they took it away. I did not have a chance to. I was at that game, but I didn't get a chance to follow up. But Adalberto Mondesi had a booted a grounder, and they changed it to a hit. So the Royals also have not. The Royals have great defense. They can't hit for crap, and their bullpen's good. Their starting pitching is suspect, but they have. We've talked about it on the show. Bobby Witt is terrific, and Mondesi and Nick Lopez from Naperville Zone is playing a good second base. So they are fun to watch on defense and not fun to watch in any other way. So.
Do UL Washington and Darryl Motley still play for the Royals?
They don't, but I did see Dennis Leonard recently at an event.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, he's fun to talk to. He's a crotchety old right-hander. And I like that. I like seeing the old Royals from the 70s. It's fun to see, Frank White. He holds a public office in Jackson County, and George Brett still comes out to the park, and it's good. It's like, you're 10 years old again, and the Royals all the cool Royals for the 70s and 80s are hanging around, and they'll have jobs to do with the Royals or the county or someone. So.
Some of the younger listeners of this podcast might not know that UL Washington played second base for the Royals, and he played it with a toothpick in his mouth. Dusty
just manages with a toothpick. Yeah. UL Washington played with it,
which just seems dangerous.
Yes, Mom, it does. You could get a grounder up in the face, and then what do you got? You got bridge work,
right? Or
you got a toothpick sticking through your lips.
Accidentally swallow your toothpick, and then you got to pass that thing. That wouldn't be pleasant.
No. You get it at both ends. Ouch.
Yeah. Oof. But I remember as a kid being like, "Oh, that's cool," and my dad's like, "No, don't get any ideas, smart guy." What? That could be my thing. Like, no, that's not going to be yours. How about your thing is successfully field a grounder once in a while? Okay, that could be my thing. I'll try to do that instead.
That's good coaching by your dad. I like that.
Yeah. The once red hot Cubs have now fallen to 6 and 7. They're tied for third with the Pirates.
Tied with the Pirates just never sounds good, no matter how many games you've played.
It's not good, especially since the Pirates are actively trying to not win. The Cubs are kind of passively trying to not win. But the Pirates are actively just like, they won't call up guys that could help. They just gave players away. And yet, same record as the Cubs. That seems...
Their top pitching prospect, Rones and Contreras, he's throwing 3 innings at a time and doing great. And what do? We sent him to AAA today. So I don't know what the Pirates apparently have so many other good starting pitchers that
That's right. That's just
they don't need Rones and Contreras out there. So I'm not complaining because I had him on my fantasy team either. I'm saying as a general ambassador to the game, the Pirates are not trying hard enough to win. That's what I'm saying.
They have a shortstop prospect. You're gonna tell me his name. O'Neill
Cruz.
Who is 6'7"?
Yes.
How does that work? Does it work?
Well, you just keep. Yeah, it might not. I mean, Cal Ripken. How tall was Cal Ripken?
Like
he wasn't that tall.
3. This is
and that was considered.
Thought he was a giant. Yeah. Now, we know Corey Seager too tall to play shortstop because Theo Epstein told us. O'Neill, I can't imagine what he thinks of O'Neill Cruz. He's like, "Whoa,
right.
what the fuck is going on with this guy?
That does not compute.
He's too tall to play baseball. He shouldn't even have a job."
And then Theo runs off in a gorilla suit. I can't handle this. I'm leaving.
Why did Theo just left a Pirates game in a gorilla suit?
Yeah, so between O'Neill Cruz and Ronzi, hey Ronzi, it's like your dog is pitching for the Pirates. Hey Ronzi.
Yeah, it's like he was born with a hockey nickname for an actual name.
Yes.
Ronzi.
Yes.
What's your real name? Like Rowan? No, Ronzi.
It's probably Rowanzi.
Mike Quaddy's brain would have exploded if he'd had Ronzi. Because what would he have called him? Ronzi E? I mean, that was Quaddy's whole thing, was he just added an E to everybody's name.
Yes. In the hockey tradition, as you said.
And I forget I wish I could remember this. There was one absurd one that he dropped. It was a guy who already had an E. And he basically it was great. Poor Mike. He was completely overmatched the whole time. And even on the nicknames.
Are we worried about Seiya at all? He didn't have a second week like he did a first week.
Well, he kept walking. He had a bad game tonight. He DH'd, and so Boog's theory was, it's tough to be a DH for the first time. You don't really know what to do with yourself.
Yeah.
When you're not hitting. It reminded me though of, you remember former Orioles player John Lowenstein.
Yeah.
He occasionally DH'd, and his theory that he got asked, what do you do while you're DHing? He said, well, between every inning, I go down and I flush the toilets to keep my wrists limber, which I thought was funny. He also was a guy who late in the season one year he went for a fly ball in Old Municipal Stadium, and he crashed into the wall, and he laid on the ground. The center fielder ran over and got the ball and threw it back in, and he didn't get up. And the trainers went out and they looked at him, and he was laying there, and they waved for bring a stretcher out. They bring a stretcher out, and he gets on the stretcher. They pick him up, put him on the stretcher. Stretcher is being wheeled back into the infield, and he just popped up off the stretcher and ran back to right field. He was fine. He just thought it would be hilarious to do that, which was pretty funny. So we just got to get. So we just got to get Seiya to go flush I'm sure Sloan is the flushing partner of the Cubs. There's plenty of Sloan toilets for him to flush between innings, keep those wrists limber.
Can you imagine trying to explain that joke and reference to Seiya with the translations?
Yeah, there's a lot of hand motions.
Would that possibly work? I don't.
Seiya is funny. He gives himself away. And I don't blame him. Like, if I was playing in Japan, I'd be using a translator too.
Yeah, right.
It's very, when he gets interviewed, it's very clear that he understands the question in English. And he's just kind of waiting for the because sometimes he interrupts the translator.
Right. It's like, we don't need this.
Yeah, I got it.
Farce.
And they will occasionally answer in English, but usually only when it has something to do with Mike Trout. He's done that twice now.
Right.
His Mike Trout, I love you. And then he had another Mike Trout thing yesterday, I think. I forget what it was. But those were his English answers. But it is funny because he just, you can just kind of see like, yeah, okay. All right. You don't have to go through the whole thing. Marquis did a thing that they were showing an interview with Seiya. And it was just a clip. It wasn't a whole interview. They just did a clip. They were just using a clip. And the way they did the clip was you heard the reporter ask the question in English. Then we heard the translator translate the entire thing to Seiya. Then we heard Seiya's entire answer in Japanese. And then we heard the translator in English. It's like, guys, we didn't need all of this. You could have simply played the translator's answer. We didn't need the other 4 minutes of this. I mean, I know you have an hour pregame show to fill, but let's not fill it with one question to Seiya Suzuki.
Right. It's funny. That's kind of a funny well, to me, thing about being a reporter when there's anybody with a translator, remembering, if I'm putting my phone up to them to record whatever they're saying, to not put up the phone to the player who's just speaking Spanish or whatever.
Yeah, make sure you get all that.
That's not going to do you any good, Dave. So,
because this should be your new go-to before. So you ask the player the question, they answer it in Spanish. You interrupt the translator, and you're like, "I don't think I got all that," and just go right back to the player again. Could you repeat that?
Yes.
And the translator, like, why? What? Why?
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
So speaking of marquee, I have my issues with the Cubs TV network.
No.
And tonight I had a big one. Maybe it was only for me. Apparently Ian Happ is wearing a batting gloves that have this like Bolt logo on them. And Taylor McGregor got the great story about how the guy who owns the company, and I don't remember the name of the company. That's how good the anecdote was. I don't remember the company. Right. He named it whatever he named it because his grandfather got struck by lightning twice.
Wow.
So Boog and JD were having a little fun with that, and I'm sitting there here in my basement, as the blogger should.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know how you would eloquently you would broach this topic, but the Cubs have a former pitcher who famously was killed by a lightning bolt. Mm. Somehow you have to work Jeremy Gonzalez into this answer. Wow. Somehow. They didn't. And it's like, why do you even have your own network then?
Right.
If you can't do it on your own network, when are you ever going to get to drop a, by the way, did you know Jeremy Gonzalez got struck by lightning on a beach? And that's what killed him? No, I didn't know that. I don't think either one of them knew it. I guess that's the part. If I thought they were like, just couldn't find an elegant way to work it in, that would be one thing.
Right.
But I'm like, they don't even know this. They don't know the real history of the franchise. The important stuff.
Yes.
It would be just as tragic as if back in the glory days, Skip Carey and Pete Van Wieren were talking about satellite dishes. And they didn't talk about how Bo Diaz got crushed by a satellite dish.
Right. Was it crushed? I thought he...
Did he fall off Did he fall off his roof trying to put his satellite dish up?
I don't really know.
It was some sort of... It
is satellite dish related.
Satellite dish installation mishap.
And I thought maybe lightning had something to do with it too, but I could be misremembering. But
this is kind of baseball related. So in Beloit, Wisconsin, where they changed the team name, I'm still irritated about this. The minor league baseball team, which I worked for a year, was the Beloit Snappers.
The Snappers,
because there's Turtle Creek runs through Beloit, and they had Snappy, the world's greatest, most depressed-looking mascot. He was just, we love Snappy, but it was like, oh God, he looks so morose. They have changed their name this year, but they rebranded. They got a new stadium last year, and they rebranded, and they have a new affiliate. They're affiliated with the Marlins now. They are the Beloit Sky Carp. Do you know what a Sky Carp is?
I remember seeing a conversation about this, but it's failing me.
It's a goose.
Oh.
That's all it is. It's a goose. But anyway, the long way to get to this is that new stadium is ABC Supply Stadium, and it was mostly funded. Beautiful stadium. It's right downtown in Beloit now. The stadium they had before, Pullman Field, maybe the worst minor league stadium in the world. I guess the one in Clinton, Iowa, worse. I never went to that one. That's the one that smells like dog food because there's a dog food plant and the whole town smells like dog food. But the Pullman Stadium's terrible. I worked there in 2003. It was a great year to work there. It was Prince Fielder, Tony Gwynn Jr., Ricky Weeks showed up right after the draft. They went to the Midwest League Championship Series where they lost to Felix PA, Justin Jones, and the Lansing Lugnuts. One of my favorite, some memorable moments. People listen to the other podcasts are like, we've heard these. I don't care. You can hit. There's a little thing. It's like it says 30 on it. You press it a few times. You skip all this. But some things that happened that year. One of them was during a road trip. The Snappers. I hesitate to call it, the facilities people had been asked by the team if they could put a door in between the clubhouse and the weight room because the way to get there was you had to go down the hall and go around. Like, it's just on the other side of the wall. Can't you just put a door in? What they did was, it was a cinder block wall. They simply chipped out a bunch of the cinder blocks. And so it was this jagged, thing. God. And I went in there after every game. I had to go in there and I was the official scorer and I ran the scoreboard. Started a new tradition, which I hope they still do. They were doing it a few years ago on first pitches, ceremonial first pitches. I would put up the ball or the strike after the pitch. It took a while for fans to catch on, but then they really enjoyed the fact that I was trying to decide whether it was a ball or a strike. It was usually a ball, but
it's pretty clever.
I mean,
so. Maybe you're hard up there in Beloit for entertainment.
We were absolutely were. So anyway, game had ended, and I had to go find Don Money. He was the manager.
Oh man,
I love Don. I had to go find Don because I don't know if this is how it's really supposed to work, but it's certainly how it works all year for me. After every game, I had to show the box score to both managers, and they could then try to argue with me to change like an error to back to a hit or whatever. I had to find Don, and I walked in. I rarely ever went into the clubhouse, but somebody's like, he's in the clubhouse, and I'm like, can I go? I'm like, yeah, you can go find him. I walked in and I looked and I saw this ridiculous hole in the wall. And I just looked at it and I go, Jesus, it looks like the Kool-Aid Man crashed through the wall. And Prince Fielder, who's all of 19, thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. And
it is pretty funny.
He apparently constantly referred to it as the Kool-Aid Man wall from after. So I enjoyed that. We had he was Anthony Gwynn at the time. He's now gone back to Tony Gwynn Jr. He was fighting the whole, I'm my own man. I'm going to be, not that he had a great relationship with his dad. Tony was there a lot, which was cool to see. Tony Gwynn would come in and he'd go to games. And we had this one great moment where there's the telephone park was the weirdest little setup. There was like at field level, there was one row of seats that was down at field level.
Yeah.
And I think it was originally put in just for scouts or whatever. And then they figured, hey, we can sell these. And so people could buy the one row. And then it went up to like normal, kind of the concourse level. And then there was a concourse, and then there were all the other seats. Well, on the concourse, in a few places they put picnic tables. And we're sitting up in the press box, and we look down, and Tony Gwynn, Hall of Fame player Tony Gwynn, is sitting at a picnic table. And a reporter from the CBS affiliate in Rockford is sitting on the other side of the table, just watching the game and shooting a little footage, and clearly has no idea who the guy is who's sitting there. And we just watched with fascination that reporter sat there for like 45 minutes and then just left. And we're like, we should call the station and be like, yeah, did you know your sports guy sat next to Tony Gwynn for 45 minutes and never ask him a question? And then early in the season, Cecil Fielder would be there. A few times I went into Don's office, and Cecil was in there, and Cecil had his big Yankee World Series ring on. And, and then one day, I showed up, and the guy, I sat next to the PA announcer, and he's like, I don't think we're going to see Cecil anymore. And I'm like, why? And he said, Prince got served today. there was a casino. Cecil owed the casino a considerable amount of money, and they couldn't get a hold of Cecil. So they served Prince, because apparently the money Cecil had lost in the casino was a considerable chunk of Prince's signing bonus.
Oh my God.
Cecil was Prince's agent. That ended right then. So we didn't see Cecil again. And then we also had, the food at the park was okay, but there was this one part of the park, there was this little, like, they called it what did they call it? The shack? That's not what they called it. But anyway, it had it had barbecue sandwiches and stuff, and the smell, it would, they had the smokers going, and that smell would waft over the thing. And I showed up at the park one day, and there was just a charred pile of rubble where that had been. And I'm like, what happened? I'm like, oh, yeah, it burned down last night. Like, oh. That was the end of the good barbecue sandwiches at Pullman Field. So, I don't know. I haven't.
Cecil did that too.
Cecil did it, probably. Oh, I think that's probably the mafia sending Cecil a warning.
The Beloit Mafia.
We know you like this barbecue. We're just going to burn it down. Yeah, I've got more. I've got lots of stories. I won't tell them all. I can just sprinkle them in. But one thing I was always fascinated by with Don was he. Sometimes I could get down there pretty fast after games. I had to like finish stuff up in the press box, and I had the world's oldest laptop that they had me use, and that slowed me down a little bit. But I'd get down there relatively quick because I wanted to get the hell out of there. And I was always amazed at how quickly he could get out of his full uniform into, this is what I would almost always be wearing when I went into his office. Like the baseball t-shirt, the t-shirt that has like the white t-shirt that has the colored sleeves that go 3/4 of the way down. He, depending on the weather, he either had it cut into a short sleeve shirt or sleeveless. And just sliding shorts. That's all he'd be in when I got there. I was like, oh, Don, could you put some pants on? So I talked to him every home game for the entire season. They actually played extra home games that year because we had a bunch of rainouts. And so we had a lot of doubleheaders. Thankfully, those were the Class A had and baseball fans got to learn the joy of these over the last few years, but they're over again. The 7-inning doubleheaders. That saved us because we were actually making up road games at, like, say Beloit was going to, they weren't going back to Burlington to play the Bees.
Yeah. But
they had a rain out. They would just make the game up in Beloit. So we should have had 72 home games. I think we had like 78.
Mm-hmm.
Plus then we had 2 rounds of playoffs. So I did lots of games. And I talked to Don after every one of those games. And they lost the championship series to the Lugnuts, and I had to go in for the last time to take the box score. And Don says to me, he looks at the box score and he goes, that's fine. And he goes, are you coming back next year? And I'm like, oh, I don't. I knew I wasn't because I didn't want to do it. But I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, we got to come back. You just got good at this job. Which was close to a compliment as you could get out of Don. But then I was feeling so I just said to him, like, you know what, Don, I'll tell you what. If you can tell me what my name is, I will come back. And Mike Guerrero was the hitting coach. And he yells he heard it, and he yells from another part of the locker of the clubhouse. He yells, his name is Andy. And Don just reaches out his hand and he goes, it was good to know you, young man. No clue what my name was. After 4 months of seeing him all the time. No clue.
That's a great, I would think any Don Money story is great, but that's a great Don Money story.
Oh, we ran into him at a bar one night after a game in Beloit, and we were playing darts, and he's like, hey, can I play? And he's like, what are we playing? Like, we're playing cricket. Oh, how's this work? And one of the other guys just looked at him and he goes, Don, it's like, none of us have any money. You're going to hustle us.
Right.
It's like, you played Major League Baseball for 15 years. Yes. You know how to play cricket. And he's like, yeah, I guess I do. Well, yeah, thanks.
So I don't know if there's like an ending to the man-made door with the jagged cinders.
Oh, that's still there because even though they've moved out, that park still stands.
And they didn't do any. I mean, couldn't you like cut yourself on it? I can't.
Well, by jagged I mean they took out full cinder blocks.
Yeah. Okay.
So instead of there just being like a nice rectangle to walk through, they pulled them out so there was like
puzzle pieces.
Yes, it was just this like it looked like Tetris. Like they hadn't filled in the middle of the Tetris thing, and so it did. It literally looked. That's all they did. I'm sure they just took a sledgehammer and they bashed a bunch of them, and then they chipped out around the edges to kind of make it look nice. But it was basically like having the Kool-Aid Man crash through the wall, and then just pick up the cinders and go, "Oh, there's your door." Prince and Tony Gwynn Jr. lived together. I think Ricky Weeks went to live with him when he showed up, and they lived in Janesville, Wisconsin. And ESPN the magazine, that was a thing back then, did a little profile on Prince, and in the profile he got asked, "Why do you live in Janesville?" And he's like, "Have you ever been to Beloit?" And that was in the article. The good people of Beloit were not amused by that. It's like, what are you going to do to him? He's 16. There was a I was official score. I have official score ethics. I can't be manipulated.
You can't be bought.
About a month into the season, Don was like, I'll tell you what. Any close play, any error at first base, give the error to Prince. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, if the throw's not terrible, but he doesn't handle it, give him the error. And I'm like, well, I mean, if it's a bad throw, I got to give the error to the. He's like, no, you don't. You have to give it to Prince. How the hell else am I ever going to get him to work on his defense if we don't start embarrassing him with the number of errors that he has? So it's like, Don, I don't really want to do that.
I don't want to be a part of this.
There was one infielder. What was his first name? His last name was Eure, E-U-R-E, Scott, who was really good defensive third baseman. We had some terrible defensive third basemen, and so I was happy whenever he played because there would be less tough decisions for me because he wouldn't wouldn't throw every ball away. There was one huge downside to that was that his brother was serving in Iraq, and so every single at bat, his walk-up music was "I'm Proud to Be an American" by Lee.
Oh my God!
Every fucking time.
Oh, no one's that proud.
And we even at one point it's like, can we tell Don to bat him like ninth? Maybe it'll save us. We won't have to. It'll save us like one time having to hear this every game.
Yes.
It didn't work. So there you go. It's nothing like a Major League Baseball podcast, and we get 20 minutes of stories about a minor league team 19 years ago. It's very relevant. But what the hell? I forgot who now I've lost my train of thought. I do that all the time. The only team in the National League, I mean the Dodgers, obviously. The Dodgers and Rockies are off to good starts. Actually, everybody in the West except for, surprise, Arizona is off to a pretty good start. But the Mets are 10-4. The first team in Major League Baseball to 10 wins.
They seem to be pretty focused, despite the losses of not having DeGrom right now, and there's somebody else. But.
Well, they lost Max for one start, or not even a start, like a day. Like he started game 2 of the season. I was like, wait a minute, I thought he was hurt. It
did seem like the sky was falling a little bit at the end of spring training. Like, oh, here they go again, and that it wasn't so bad.
Well, they had the weird thing where they had Dom Smith traded, and he thought he was going to the Padres, and he was all excited about it, and then they're like, we didn't do it. Like the old, how could I forget the guy's name? Do you remember when the Cubs were trying to trade? Delgado, Randall Delgado. Russ, that doesn't sound right. Pitcher for the Braves.
Yeah.
Crap.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ryan Dempster had been traded to the Braves, but Ryan Dempster wanted to go to the Dodgers. So he used his no trade. And on Twitter, the guy's tweet was, they don't did a trade. So I still used they don't did a trade. So poor Dom Smith, he was all excited, but they don't did a trade. And he didn't get traded to the Padres. He's still playing for the Mets. Poor guy has to be in first place instead. It's a hardship.
Yeah, well, he's been seemingly stuck behind other people on that team. Alonso, and I think he's a first baseman. I don't really think he's much of an outfielder. And it should have been a guy that they should have traded a few years ago. And now that they have a DH, I guess they have a use, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was Randall Delgado. They don't did a trade.
Randall. Yeah, that's a guy.
That's a guy.
For the White Sox? I don't remember that. He's only 32. He's Panamanian.
Instead, that trade didn't go through. The Cubs had to settle for a trade where they got Kyle Hendricks instead.
Right.
Yeah, which I guess that worked out. Dempster somehow can take credit for that. Does he really want to go to the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers didn't want him?
Right.
Yeah, the American League is really, everybody is pretty much 8-5 or 7-5 or 6-6, except for Texas and the Orioles. So after 14 days, we've learned nothing. Nothing has been decided.
But, and that's how it usually is, I think. Mm-hmm. It's not. I'd like everything to mean something, but it doesn't.
Don Zimmer used to say, and he's a mathematician, that after 40 games, if you were 20-20 or better, you were in it. And if you were worse than that, you were screwed. So, and we still got a long way to go before we even get to 40 games.
Zim, baseball wise, despite having the leaky head.
Nothing like hiring a manager who literally has a plate in his head. But he managed a lot of teams.
Yeah, he did.
And he managed one of my favorite teams of all time, the 1989 Cubs. I mean, if people think Joe Maddon did crazy stuff, right? They didn't live through a Don Zimmer season. The Don more than once that season put the hit and run on with the bases loaded.
It's exciting to see all those guys moving, all those legs moving at once.
Yeah. Maybe a dubious strategy given most of the bat control of most of the '89 Cubs. But I mean, I guess if you got Vance Law up there, why not?
Right.
Who's going to possibly overpower Vance Law? Nobody. You're in good shape. But yeah, so the Cubs, they kind of weathered a tough part of their schedule. Why does it start on? There we go, April. Well, I mean, I guess they lost 2 or 3 of the Rays. Maybe they didn't weather that. But they've got 4 games with the Pirates. But then things get a little rougher for them next week. They get to see their old friend Jesse Chavez and the Braves. Then they go to Milwaukee.
I can't believe that the Cubs already are selling.
This was typical. So the Jesse Chavez for Sean Newcomb trade was Jesse Chavez and cash considerations for Sean Newcomb. And it's like, I mean, poor Tom Ricketts. Wait till he finds out they actually had to send a check. Well, then they traded, but today they traded Corey Abbott and got cash considerations.
Right.
So it all evened out.
It's
sure,
neutral.
Tom's like, you got to sell somebody to make up for all that money we just sent for that left-handed reliever that you just signed that can throw his fastball and nothing else. I'm sure it'll work out great. But the Newcomb thing, it's probably not going to work, but it's the kind of thing that the Cubs should be doing.
Right.
It's a guy with a good arm that has a track record who he's been throwing his cutter a lot, and batters have really been enjoying that. The slugging average, his slugging percentage against his cutter this year is 1,000. Is that high?
Yeah,
it seems high.
When you go past the decimal point, that's too much.
But the Cubs will get him in their vaunted pitch lab.
Right.
And it'll fix everything because it's just what they do. So that'll be great.
I mean, you're right, and we're making fun, and it probably won't work, but even though it's April and they're already selling parts, which just sits funny, they should be, they need to add guys like this in volume and see if they can turn one of them into something.
I mean, as much as I like Jesse Chavez, and I did, I mean, he was a 2018 Cub. Or maybe he might have been a 19 Cub. What year was it? They all blurred together. All the disappointing years after the World Series kind of blurred together. And he was great for them. And then they couldn't afford to keep him the next year. It's like, oh, God. He signed for like 2 years, $8 million with the Braves.
Right.
It's like, no. Or with the Rangers. I think he went to the Rangers.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, oh, for fuck's sakes. So they brought him back this year. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But after we'd seen him pitch a few times, it's like, you know what? Maybe it's not as cool as we thought. So he wasn't pitching very well. Newcomb wasn't pitching very well. It was basically the Braves were like, Jesse was pretty good for us last year. Why don't you give him back? We'll get him back on track, and then you can play with Sean Newcomb for a while, and maybe you can fix him, and then everybody would be happy. So that's really what they did.
I guess it's a good, an accidentally good byproduct of the lockout that we're having weird little trades like this in mid to late April, which is something that I feel like we used to have maybe like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to see, with the we have this kind of weird, typically at the end of spring training, that's the time when teams are trying to sneak guys through waivers.
Yeah.
And that's when waiver claims happen and there's all kinds of stuff. It was lessened this year because the rosters artificially were bigger. They were 28 instead of, and so like I know the Cubs, there were some decisions they just didn't have to make for a month. They're like, well, no, we got 2 extra spots. We don't have to worry about trying to sneak this guy down to Iowa. We'll just leave him on the roster. And I think you are going to see little minor trades like this over the next couple of weeks because teams are like, well, I don't want to. We got to get something for this guy. If there's a team that'll take him, otherwise we're going to have to put him on. Somebody's going to claim him on waivers, which was going to happen. The 2 trades the Cubs made, the Cubs wanted to claim Newcomb, but they figured they were too far. They were 6-6 at the time. They're like somebody's going to grab him. The Reds are going to grab him because they have no pitching. They have Hunter Green and nobody else, so they're going to claim him. So they had to do this trade, and then, Christ, I don't remember who. Cubs had waived Corey Abbott so they could activate the incredibly talented Mark Leiter Jr. And it was the same thing. Somebody's going to get him on waivers. So instead, a team's like, can we just give you some money, and trade him to us? So that's what they did. I think you're going to see. It's nothing going to be obviously nothing earth shattering is going to happen, but I think there will be like a weird little bubble of late April trades for no better reason than. They've got guys on the 40-man that they don't have any options left.
Right.
And it's either lose him for nothing or get something for him. And that's what happened the last 2 days with the Cubs. So we got that to look forward to. It's basically like a mini trade deadline, except with bad players.
With bad players with huge pants. Jesse Chavez has more, yards per liter or whatever than anybody else in the league. He's got the hugest pants.
I wonder if I think the Cub grays and the Braves grays are pretty close. I wonder if he they let him just take his pants.
Right.
Yeah. You better leave the pinstripes so you can take the grays. Okay. And then he's got
that would be a great odd question to ask him.
Yeah.
Are you wearing your Cubs giant pants right now?
You see it pitch because
What? I lost you.
I bumped the mute while I was doing unnecessarily. I was pointing to my hip, and I hit
Right.
the mute. I hit the cough button on my microphone because the Cubs road pants have the little Cub logo on the hip. I don't know if you've ever noticed.
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah. The guy who does Uni Watch was fascinated by the weird little touches that the Cubs uniforms have.
Mm-hmm.
The blues, which I hardly ever wear. I'm so glad because I hate them.
Right.
That alternate jersey blue is the only jersey in baseball that has a league patch on it. The Cubs have a National League patch on it, and the reason they do is that the patch that they typically have on the sleeve of their jerseys is the crawling bear.
Yes.
Well, that's the logo that's actually on the chest. So they're like, we got to put something on the sleeve, and some genius said, put the we're so proud of being the charter franchise of the National League. We'll just put the National League logo on there.
Well, this is like the dumb White Sox adding a second SOX. They had the kind of cool, I thought, the base or whatever it was.
Yeah, with the little sock.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. And then, no, let's put another socks on there.
Yeah. No, the Cubs, I think the Dodgers do it now too, right? Where the Cubs have the raised, the batting helmets actually have like a raised, like embroidered logo, which
not embroidered, but I get it.
Well, I think it actually is, and then it's a sticker.
You can embroider like non-fabric.
Well, it's fabric. It's just made. It's a sticker. Like they took the embroidered C and they put like a sticky backing on it, and they stick it on the helmet. And occasionally, because it's raised, guys throwing their helmets around, the C will be sideways,
right,
or it'll be missing, which is always funny. They also have this weird thing where if you've ever noticed, the font for the number on the back of the helmet looks like the Red Sox jersey font for no reason. Right. Like they couldn't buy stickers that have their own Cub. The Cubs have very distinct numbers. Nobody else uses that font.
Right.
Why do they have it's like they were at a garage sale.
Yes.
Like they went to show. Well, they copy everything. Red Sox. So the Ricketts were probably at like a Fenway garage sale, and Todd came home with a box full of numbers.
Look at this stuff, guys.
Look what I got. It's a big score. Yeah, so there's that. I forget. There was a bunch of. They have a bunch of weird little quirky, which are kind of cool. Stuff on their uniforms. So those are the ones I remembered because he was fascinated by why do the pants need the little. It's so small, like you only can see it on TV. Fans at a game have no idea that the Road Grays have a little Cub logo on the hip.
Right,
but they do. Why not? I guess some poor, clubby is like, I have to sew the fucking logo on the pants again. Jesse Chavez showed up and he brought gray pants, and I got to sew the damn logo on them. Oh. Yeah, and then we were in one of our first podcasts together. I told an erroneous anecdote. Can you believe that?
No.
The anecdote that I got right was the fact that the Cubs retired 31 for two guys who, at the time, were the only two pitchers in baseball history with 3,000 strikeouts and less than 1,000 walks. That was right. But then I said that the Bears have retired number 7 for two guys, George Halas and George McAfee. That was wrong. George McAfee was number 5.
Oh.
So the Bears did not retire. Still, I think, the Yankees have 8 retired for two guys, Bill Dickey and Yogi Berra.
Right.
And the Cubs have 31 retired for
two catchers and 2 pitchers. It's very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of funny.
But I was wrong, and I remember this crap co-host, Mike Donahue, was happy to shame me in my wrongness.
I mean, it's always good to be correct, but being kind of hard on you there.
Yeah.
So George Halas was 7.
He was 7. And that's what's retired for him. And for Bob Avellini, probably. I would guess.
Yeah, was it? But when did they retire 7 when Hallis died?
It's a good question.
Because
it just kind of happened. I don't know if anybody wore it after Avellini. Bob Avellini is easily my least favorite bear of all time.
Yeah.
He was awful, and a young me threw a very terrible tantrum in our house when Bob Avellini threw a game-wrecking interception in the Kingdome. I've told this story in that podcast, but that was I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, and I was very mad. And my dad just turned to my brother and goes, Andrew takes this pretty hard. So I always hated Bob Avellini for that. I don't know that anybody wore it after him. The one thing I don't like, I think the Bears have really cool uniforms. The one thing I don't like is I don't like their ones. It's a stripe. It's not a number. Like Justin Fields is just wearing a stripe. There's no serif at all.
There's no serif.
How about a little, something poking out to the left or a little thing at the bottom? Nah, just one big long stripe painted right down the middle of the jersey, and we're calling that good.
It is consistent, is it not? Though does a 7 sort of look like that? But
yeah, it actually makes sense given the way the numbers look.
Right.
But it's kind of bleh. But very few guys had ever just worn one.
Was Jeff Jager one?
Jeff Jager, I believe Jeff George was one. A lot of people don't remember Jeff George played for the Bears for like a week and a half.
I'm not remembering it.
Yes. He was one. Not very many guys have worn it. Mostly, I think, because when you pick it and they show it to you, you're like, well, that looks stupid. Give me another. Give me another one. Give me another. 11 looks weird too on a Bear jersey.
Yeah.
It's like it looks like you're wearing a shirt that's just like a remembrance of the Twin Towers. Oh, that was a terrible day. What?
What are you talking about?
It's just Roy Williams standing there going, what? No, it's 11. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, sorry. I remember where I was that day, Roy. Never forget.
Roy's like, what?
What are you talking about? All right, well, that's probably enough.
Okay.
We descend into Roy Williams jokes. It's time to go. But it's always fun. So until next time, thanks, David.
You're welcome. Thank you, Andy.
Many of us have herpes.